This episode of Tales from the Lot is sponsored by ShakedownT-shirts.com with unique lot-style T-shirts, license plate frames, coffee mugs, and all sorts of things for Grateful Dead, Fish, Zappa, Panic, and more. ShakedownT-shirts.com, where all U.S. orders over $35 ship free. And just for Tales from the Lot listeners, use the code LOT20 for 20% off of any order. That's LOT20. Tales from the Lot, Episode 6. I Was Forced to Like It by MTV. My guest today is Gunnar Hanson. He's here to talk about 6/24/1984 at the Saratoga Performing Arts Center. Let's do it. Hey, welcome to Tales from the Lot. My guest today is Gunnar Hanson. We're here to talk about SPAC from 84. It was 6/24/84. I listened to it today. It was a great show. How you doing, Gunnar?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. I'm doing really well. It's been a nice, mild fall here in the Mountain West for us.
We got snow coming.
Yeah, indeed.
We need it.
For sure. So this SPAC show, was this the first time you had seen the Grateful Dead?
It was actually the fifth, but that said, the first Dead show I saw was at SPAC the year before. So it was returning to the scene of the crime.
Indeed.
And I was literally dragged to my first Dead show in '83, and $8 ticket, a $2 piece of paper, and I didn't know what hit me.
Man, it's like deja vu. That's my story exactly. I went to Deer Creek, sort of dragged by a friend, and he said, here's a ticket, piece of paper, and here's another piece of paper, and I'll see you in a little bit. You tell me what you think. And then scene of the crime the following year, just like that. So what were you into at the time? Where were you coming from musically growing up?
Well, growing up, I was into some basic stuff like Led Zeppelin and the Beatles, and then along came Rush, and then I remember my brother bringing home Close to the Edge by Yes, and that really hit me, and so I started going in a prog direction. Mm-hmm. And Genesis became my favorite band after I heard Seconds Out, and so I was kind of in that prog scene back then, which kind of went away when I fell in love with the Grateful Dead, but the prog thing's come back in the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, that tends to happen to people when you first discover the Grateful Dead. There's from really any time you jump on, there's so much to catch up on that it kind of consumes your musical listening for a while.
Right.
At least it did for me. That's great. Yeah, all that prog stuff I've always been a fan of. I'm a big fan of Rush and Yes and Genesis, even some later Genesis. I'm guilty of.
Well, After the Duke record, I was like, oh, I can't handle this pop stuff. Abacab.
It was like 85 or something, right in there.
Around there, yeah.
I was just kind of coming into my own as a human and figuring out music. So that was what was there, and I was kind of forced to like it by MTV.
You're probably a tad younger than me.
Yeah, I'm 48.
Okay.
Not that you have to say how old you are. I don't have to put you on
57.
All right, yeah. So we're not too far off.
No.
We're not too far off. But definitely, there was a lot of good music coming out. When I was through early '70s, mid '70s, and then so you got dragged to this Grateful Dead show, and how did that happen? Who was the person, and how did that all come about?
Well, I went to high school in Exeter, New Hampshire, and in Exeter, New Hampshire, there was a good amount of Deadheads, but I was not into the Grateful Dead. But I sure wanted to hang out with those people, and then I went to UNH for 1 year, and at UNH there was a whole bunch of Deadheads on my floor. And still, I couldn't stand it. But sitting around the backgammon table and pulling off that glass tube and eventually I started getting into that Blues for Allah record,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Blues for Allah really softened me up. And so at the end of the semester, a whole bunch of them were heading out to Saratoga, and they wanted me to go, and I'm like, sure. I had heard from people, that you got to go see him, you got to go see him, and
Yeah.
for $8, you couldn't go wrong.
At very least, it's a good time,
Yeah, yeah. And I remember just being overwhelmed. And it was just there was 40,000 people there. I'd never been in a crowd that big,
Hmm.
and it was an interesting show, and they did a Scarlet Fire the first night, which was that first show, which was interesting, and they went into a long playing in the band, and the thing about that first concert was, I don't know if you ever heard the '83 Saratoga, but they do a morning dew for the ages,
Okay.
and so the morning dew just threw me over the edge. I'm like, what's happening?
Yeah.
And it was a little too much towards the end.
Hmm.
They did several songs after the dew,
Right.
but but when I that first show, we drove 6 hours to New York, got out of the car, started going to the show, got our minds blown, and I frankly I ran away from the concert like during the encore. I was freaked out, and Saratoga is an interesting place. I was running across this golf course, and I was in the woods, and then I came out on the highway, and I'm like, where am I? How am I going to get home? I don't know where the car is. And I was wandering up and down the highway, wondering what I'm going to do. And am I going to have to hitch home from Saratoga to Exeter, New Hampshire?
Oh no.
And just when I was resigned to sticking my thumb out of the woods pops one of my buddies that I rode with. Hey, I don't know.
Wow. So you were sort of on the right track then, probably wherever you were headed, huh?
Apparently so. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The first time it could be an assault on like all the senses. I mean, there's visuals and there's, the smells of the whole ordeal and the music and the people and the drums in the parking lot and just like, it's just an all out sensory thing your first time there for sure.
Well, I remember from the moment I got out of that car at that first concert that everybody was nice, and that struck me right away. Everybody's so nice here. I like this. And in the crowd, everybody was just so nice, and that was a lasting impression for me.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really what drew it to me. I mean, coming from Central Indiana, uh, everybody was sort of angry. I felt like the weather sucks there. It's either too hot or too cold, and it's humid and not a lot to do, and everybody's just "Rrr," and then this thing comes rolling through town, and I go to Deer Creek, and everybody's all smiles and high fives, and wow, I like this. I could really get on board with some happiness. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but but yeah, I didn't know what hit me after that first concert, and so I went home and told my best buddy. I said, "Hey, we got to check this out again. I
Hmm.
want to find out what's really going on." And so we wound up going to see another show in Portland, Maine, about 4 months later, and got our minds blown again. And me and my buddy were like, "Where are they playing next?" "Oh, they're in Worcester, Mass. Want to go?" "Okay." So we were at the next show after that. And I'd seen one more in the spring tour in Providence before this Saratoga thing came around again.
Hmm.
And when this Saratoga thing came around again, I gathered up a crowd of people, a lot of newbies, and we drove in a few cars, at least 10 of us, and went out there with enough time to have a really good time.
Uh-huh.
We drove the night before and camped out, and so it was a Sunday show, And that whole day, we just had fun with all the friendly strangers we were meeting. You know,
Nice. What was so I did sort of the same thing, and after I'd been, I brought a bunch of friends who had no idea about any of it. What was the return percentage after that? So how many people continued to go on their own?
most of them.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I think I took like 6 people, and only one of them really caught on, but he caught on hardcore. So it was like the power of 6 people in this one.
Yeah, most of my friends were blown away, and it was another life changing event. You know that Saratoga '84. My disclaimer is that is not an incredible show. It's a great show, but it's not. It's not an epic show. But the crowd was raging, and the band was raging enough. And at the time, fifth show in, I really couldn't exactly tell what was an epic Dead show yet. You
Hmm.
know, it was great. But the whole experience with all of my friends there, getting their face melted, and all the friendly people around us, we just had one of the greatest times of our life. And it
Was
rained like crazy.
ah, did it dry up for the show, or did it rain through the show too?
Well, during the day it was really nice,
Uh-huh.
and I think the first set was fine, and then during the break, the skies opened up and it was just dumping.
Wow.
But of course, our heads were in a certain frame of mind where
Indeed.
it didn't really matter too much.
So, what was the lot scene like in '84? I mean, I got on board in '91, and it was pretty well a full time city moving around the
Yeah,
country. So,
yeah,
in '84, was it that side? I mean, what was going on in the lot in that time frame? That's kind of pre Touch Gray.
yeah. The good thing about that era was camping was never a big deal in the lot. Nobody gave you a hard time if you showed up a day early and stayed a day late. It was all pretty lovey dovey, and Shakedown wasn't in any one place. Shakedown was everywhere.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they really hadn't got it organized yet, and
Right, right.
organized and centralized and all that.
But now the thing about Saratoga, I don't know if you've ever looked at that pictures of the venue.
I did
It's,
today, actually.
and then there's this place right next door. Uh, well, there's the Saratoga Opera and this other building. I can't remember the name of it, but it's kind of Greco-Roman kind of architecture, and this beautiful lawn with a big pond, and everybody's wandering around next door in this wonderful courtyard. And like I said, during the day it was nice and sunny, and we were just meeting strangers, and I remember seeing my first trip disc. Do you remember what those were?
The sounds familiar, but I can't. No, what is that?
Kind of looks like a CD, but it's all mylar and it spins. So if you spin this thing on the ground and the sun's shining on it, and you're in the right frame of mind, it's wow.
Completely mesmerizing.
Yeah, you can't really get them anymore. I wish I'd get one if I could, but it's a thing of the past.
I bet there's a market for it. Nostalgia is something.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Figure out how those are made and get that market quick.
Got an idea there. Yeah.
So Saratoga, it's got a big It's got a big general admission area sort in the middle, sort of, right? Is that?
Well, it's a shed amphitheater with a lawn.
Mhm.
What makes Saratoga quite different is there's also a balcony, and there's long walkways from the lawn to the balcony, and I had just lawn seats every time I went there. But one of the interesting things about these long balconies was they were chock full of people dancing their ass off. So you're looking up in the sky and seeing these bridges of dancing hippies, and
Uh,
it's pretty fun.
Yeah, that was probably before jumbotrons.
Yes,
Right? I don't
yes,
think they had those.
no, and from the lawn, the band was fairly far away,
Yeah.
but that didn't matter.
No, no. I mean, yeah, I've been there for sure.
Yeah,
Not to Saratoga, but in the situation for sure.
there's some shows you go to, and watching the band is rather unimportant.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. So, yeah, that was a great first set. I was noticing the dancing. That was just like as soon as I hit play on it, I was like, okay, they're fired up. The energy's there, and pulled out my dead bass and realized they hadn't played it for like 3 years or something like that.
Right,
So,
right. I didn't realize it at the time, but that was kind of a special opener.
yeah, and they got through with it. It's funny before they started playing Direwolf that Brent is still just just still playing
Right,
the riff
right.
over and over in
Mhm.
between the songs. He was loving it so much he didn't want to stop.
And then they popped into Direwolf, and that was a song that by this time I knew. I was getting familiar with the catalog, and Direwolf was wonderful. And I think right after that came Minglewood, and that was when the full on rage went into effect.
Yeah, I was listening to that thinking, that maybe Bobby's not a bad slide player. Maybe we're just not advanced enough to understand what he's doing yet.
Well, I went back and listened to that show again, and I thought in that Minglewood, it has a pretty bitchin' slide solo.
It does until just like the very end, and then I think he just tries to push it too far.
Yeah, he starts to do some weirdness.
Yeah, but I'm with you though. Like as I was listening to it, I was thinking, "Wow, this may be the best bobslide I've heard." And then it gets to the end, and it's like pling plong pling.
You're
Like,
right.
whoa.
Yes, you're right.
like okay, maybe we just don't get it yet, or something.
Well, Bobby hasn't changed.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
true.
he's still doing that kind of stuff
Yeah,
with a crazier tone.
yeah, yeah. Are you seeing him these days?
I still go a fair share. I was out in Denver in August.
Cool.
Yeah, I caught two of the shows at Fiddler's Green, and they were wonderful.
Yeah, I wasn't there, but I did listen to them, and yeah, some of the best shows I've heard from them.
Yeah, the second night was one of my favorite post Jerry shows so far.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably agree with you. Yeah, it was a really good one.
But I've seen about 14 or 16 Dead and Company shows so far.
Gotcha. I haven't seen them other than sort of a impromptu performance at Red Rocks one time that they did. But were you at Jerry's birthday, that 75th birthday thing at Red Rocks
No,
a
was
few
that
years ago?
'05 or?
No, it would have been 17 or 16 or something like that.
I
Anyway,
it was like an all-star lineup.
yeah. It was like acoustic band and then JGB electric band and then it was supposed to be Bob as the headliner, and he did a couple of songs, but then O'Teal came out and John Mayer came out, and I think Melvin played keys with them. Maybe I can't remember. It's been a few years.
Hmm.
It was good though. My favorite thing though, post Jerry was the Mickey Hart band when he had
Oh, sure.
yeah, with David Schools,
Yes.
and he had like that badass keyboard trombone player kind of leading the band, and
Uh-huh.
I'm not a big fan of Panic and didn't know a lot about David Schools, but after that show, I was definitely a fan of his because he just put on a clinic that night.
He can
Him
be a
and Mickey
freight
Hart.
train.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. I was just like, wow, how have I not paid attention to this guy before?
Yeah,
It's
I,
good
I
stuff.
saw a couple Mickey Hart band shows. I was going to see a third. I can't remember. It was one of those rare nights in Salt Lake City where there was two great bands I wanted to see, and I had just seen Mickey Hart band a few months before, so I went to whatever the other show was. I don't
Yeah.
remember what it was, but I kind of wish I'd gone to see Mickey again because that was a fabulous band.
Yeah, it's too bad he's not. I mean, who knows what they'll do with those songs? But they put out a couple of good albums, and
Mhm.
it was a good band, So it was good for its time, I guess, and that was
Yep.
that.
Yep.
So Yeah, Bobby's slide playing.
Well, the, one of the things about the Saratoga '84 was Bob had a real chunky tone going on. And I don't know what guitar it was he was playing right then, but there's only one other show I've heard that tone at, and that was a show from 3 nights before in Toronto. And it was just kind of a unique tone. He was seemed like he was playing um, lower on the neck than he usually does. He was plenty loud. Um, so sometimes Bobby gets lost in the mix, you know.
It's true, yeah.
And that certainly wasn't happening in Saratoga. And so after Minglewood, there was a Candyman.
Which they just brought the volume way down on. So the dynamics, there was so much dynamics through that whole show. Like the loud was raging, and then they would just bring it down to silence. And that Candyman was one of those moments.
Yes.
Times.
And the thing for me, Candyman is always about Jerry's solo, because he always just slays it and different every time, and that's a good example. And then when they get to the verse where he says, "Hand me my old guitar and pass the whiskey round," you know, the band was coming down around him and the crowd was going nuts, and it was beautiful. So yeah, they did a Ramble on Rose and a Hell in a Bucket, and that was a lot of fun. And Ramble on Rose, I don't know that by that time I had thoroughly digested the majesty of that song, but it is a good version.
Yeah, that's like if somebody's like, "What's the Grateful Dead sound like?" That's kind of my go-to song. Like this is a kind of a representation of a Grateful Dead song, sort of. You know, like Americana, a little bit weird, a little bit funny. You know, some storytelling. I always thought that was kind of a nice representation of here's somebody new coming to it.
That's fair.
That's what I play for them.
Yeah, they did a bucket, which is always rock and roll, you know.
Yeah,
and
relatively new at the time.
Yep. And they finished the set with Deal, which was, you know, that night it was amazing. You know, in the grand scope of deals, it falls somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, it was a deal. Wasn't a bad deal.
Right. Yeah. And then, you know, they took a break, and all of a sudden it starts raining like crazy. And, you know, I don't really remember what all went down during the set break, but I sure do remember the way that second set opened up, because that was one of the Grateful Dead moments that I just will never forget, because the crowd was definitely getting antsy, you know. We're all soaking wet. The band comes out and they're kind of dragging their feet, and the whole crowd gets to clapping, you know, and 40,000 people are clapping in unison, and then the band starts right out on time with the clapping with a Miracle, you know, and it was all out rocking, you know. And the crowd was going berserk, and back then Miracle Bertha was an occasional pairing, but in '83, '84. And it went into Bertha, and of course Bertha's always been one of my favorites. But
that was light speed too. That's a fast Bertha.
Yes. Well, you know, back then they were definitely focusing on marching powder.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
On a regular basis.
Yeah, and you can kind of tell through that whole show that Jerry was a little hoarse at the beginning until he worked it out a little bit.
Yep. But the Bertha, you know, it's pouring hard, and Jerry starts going, "Ran into a rainstorm," and you can hear the crowd just going berserk, you know, and Jerry feeds right off of it, and he's like, "And all that pouring, not a drop on me," you know, and the crowd is just apeshit.
They were good at that. They'd always be able to pull out, you know, an appropriate song for the moment.
That was it. That was it. And Phil was dropping some big bombs, and it was just all. It's really among my most favorite Berthas.
Yeah.
So, and then I think after that they went into playing. Yeah,
Which is about as opposite from Bertha as you could get, and fantastic.
yeah. I mean, playing's always fun,
Yeah.
and it wasn't an epic playing, but it was certainly a good playing, and playing drops into China Doll, and China Doll was beautiful.
That was the highlight of this one for me, I think. The
I
China Doll.
can, yeah, I think it's one of the best China Dolls I know.
Yeah.
You know, they had such a great mood going on for that, and it was sad and tragic, and you know, Jerry and the guys hit the chorus really well, even though Jerry's voice did crack a little bit.
Yeah.
And it seemed like after China Doll, it seems like they're going into drums, you know, and the whole crowd thinks they're going into drums, and they pull out Samson and Delilah, you know, and it's all out rock time again.
Yeah, just that little breather, and then back to the rocking. This whole show was pretty rocking. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, even some of the slower songs were kind of rocking.
Yeah, and drums was okay. Back then, I still didn't know a good drums from a bad drums, and Space was pretty good. It had its moments of twisting your brain around, and then they come out of that with another one, and can't go wrong with that.
No, it was tight and good too.
It wasn't an epic other one, but it was rocking.
Yep.
And then it dropped into another beautiful piece of music. They did a wonderful Wharf Rat. And from there, it goes to Sugar Mag. And Sugar Mag was always fun, you know, and they rocked it out hard. So it was still raining. And they come back for the encore, and they whip out a Satisfaction.
Yeah.
I knew they did it once in a while, but I had never heard it before. But again, I'll say that's one of the best Satisfactions there is.
Yeah, I agree.
It was fantastic. And I was noticing when listening to the bootleg I got of it, I remember that Bobby and Brent were doing, you know, little vocal stuff, and Bobby was trying to get the one side of the crowd to go, "I can't get no," and then the other side of the crowd, "Satisfaction," and "I can't get no Satisfaction." And I'm thinking from listening to that tape that the taper was on the side where everybody was saying, "I can't get no," because you can't hear the people saying Satisfaction. But anyway, you know, I remember Bob right at the end trying to wind it all up, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And how often do double encores happen? Not very much. So they came back with "It's All Over Now, Baby Blue," which was always beautiful.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite Dylan songs for sure.
Sure. Yeah.
That Satisfaction, I was listening to it, and Bob cracks me up sometimes. He's a funny guy, and he's definitely entertaining, and I'm glad he was in the spot he was in for sure. He
still is, you know, he's got that wry, dry sense of humor. Because I remember after this Dead and Company show, I saw the second one in August at Fiddler's Green. You know, they had put on a great show, and he knew it, and he just kind of shot one of those shy little Cheshire Cat grins to the camera, you know.
So what did they encore with that night?
It was Broke Down.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I have this theory that they know when they play a good show and always pick special encores for those. Like, you know, get Liberty or something like that. Like a really great show.
The night before they had done The Wait, which some people call it The Wake. And I get why they say that, because that's one of the less fun encores, in my opinion.
I think so these days. I mean, back in the day, I sort of liked it when,
right.
You know, Brant era, they're good. And when I first saw him with Hornsby, he would do a verse, and I was always kind of into hearing that. But I think the latter years, recent ones that I've heard of,
yeah,
not quite as good.
No, I agree. I agree. They could drop that, and I don't think anybody would be too sad.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that show, I remember, like, I was talking with two of my buddies yesterday, just kind of picking their brain for some reminiscences, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a good exercise because these old friends, they're across the country now, and talking to them doesn't happen too much. But I spent a solid hour on the phone with buddies, and it was crying to tears, of laughter. We were we were just cracking up about every little thing about Saratoga. It was just too much fun.
With old tour buddies, did you go see more shows with them? And I mean, how many did you hit overall?
60, 60
60?
with Jerry, and then
Uh-huh.
I only saw JGB twice, and I caught an acoustic Jerry and John one time. And I after Jerry died, I did a few of those further festivals, which were kind of depressing.
Yeah, I agree. I did the first one, and I don't think I saw any more of those. It's
Then
like the
I saw,
Black Crows were there, and I was like, "What is this? Is all
yeah.
weird."
Well, the best thing about the further festivals was Hot Tuna. Hot Tuna was always a good time.
Yeah, and I liked Rat Dog. They weren't too bad. I think that's who was on. Like Rat Dog played, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like the
And the
first one.
Mickey Hart Band was in one of them.
That was the Mickey Hart Mystery Box, though, not to be
Right.
confused.
Yes,
'Cause
yes, you're
that
right.
one was a little, eh.
I liked it. I
I
liked, but still, I caught a '98 Other One show, which was a lot of fun at Alpine Valley. But then I kind of dropped out of the scene for a few years.
Mhm.
I didn't see anything in '99, 2000, 2001, and towards the end of 2002, I caught a Rat Dog show, and it was okay, but it gave me that urge to jump back in,
Mhm.
and I started going to shows again. I went back east and saw a Hartford show, which was good, and then a Mansfield show, which wasn't good. Then I caught New Year's that year, which was way good, and then I caught them at Red Rocks the next year and a couple nights, and they played in Salt Lake City, which was fun because we were front row center, and then caught them in Boise, which was really
Nice.
good, but further further in 3610. You ought to look that one up sometime.
Three.
3610. Yeah, that's
Writing it down.
Colorado. That's Broomfield, Colorado.
Got it.
3610. That
Was
was one of the best post Jerry shows. Epic night, I thought.
Gotcha. Was that the First Bank Center?
Yes.
Yeah. Uh, I've only been there once. I saw the Ween comeback show when they retired or whatever they did for a few years and then came
Really?
back. That was the first place they played, and so I caught their return show. It was pretty good.
I really am not all that familiar with Ween.
They're not for everybody, but they're fun.
I think the only song I could name would be "Roses Are Free" because I heard Fish do it.
Yeah, which they do it pretty damn well, honestly. Fish does. I
Yeah.
like when they play that.
Yeah.
Do you see them very often?
Well, being from New England, I was on that Fish bus pretty early,
Mhm.
and I caught about 20 shows in the '90s. And then my wife and I went to Big Cypress on the Millennium, and that was interesting. It was, well, what I remember of it.
That was like the all night, like
Yeah,
8 hour set or something. Something like
yeah,
that.
and that was. I'm sober now, but back then certainly was not, and I have very little memories of it. I know what happened was a little. It was crazy. Just we that was like one show where we smoked something that somebody handed to us, and it was laced with something, and that's where our memories stopped.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had something like that at Deer Creek one time. for the Grateful Dead.
Speaking of Deer Creek, my wife and I got to go there for the first time in 2018, seeing Dead and Company, and it was a fantastic show. But one of the great things about, I say great things, it was a wonderful show. And then right as we're all leaving the show, it started pouring buckets. And some would say that was a bad thing, but I remember what my wife and I were just cracking up all through it, And we were stone cold sober,
Deer Creek's a nice venue, though. I grew up there seeing just everybody, and this is kind of my stomping grounds, and a lot of fond memories from there.
Well, we sure enjoyed it there.
Yeah.
I think we caught a good night.
Nice.
In Utah, the boys don't come around enough. Usually, if I want to see them, I got to travel.
Yeah, you got to go to like California or Colorado.
We've gone out. We go to Colorado fairly regularly. We've gone to the Gorge a couple times. We've gone out to the shoreline and stuff like that. We've gone to Vegas.
I need to get to the Gorge. I've still not been there.
Highly recommend.
Yeah, Red Rocks is like 20 minutes, 30 minutes from me, so I hit that all the time. But I've heard that the Gorge rivals it, so I need to get out there.
Yes, it does rival it. I'd like to get back to Red Rocks because 2006 was the last time I was there.
Yeah,
I caught a Phil and Friends show there. Yeah,
they used to play there quite frequently.
Yep,
Phil did.
Yep.
And the Dead too. I was looking in my Dead bases. I was looking at this show, the Saratoga show. I noticed that they had played 3 nights there, like a week or two before they came through New York.
Yep.
Would have been some fun shows to be at for sure. Catching the Dead at Red Rocks, yes, please.
Well, it was really cold there when they were there this past summer. It was, I guess, it was like 40 on stage. They were having trouble staying warm.
Yeah, that does happen. But,
yeah.
And a friend of mine was talking about going to a show. So it's December 6th, and a friend of mine was talking about going to a show a few days ago at Red Rocks, some sort of frigid dance fest where they know it's going to be cold, and no thank you. I can just imagine falling down those stairs.
Right.
No thank you.
No, I don't like freezing at shows.
No, not at all. But yeah, they're still kicking year round, I guess, just because they can.
Well,
they do a lot of things out there like that. They do Sunday morning church services and yoga in the afternoons and all kinds of things going on out at Red Rocks.
I went over there for a little walk when I was out there in August, and even when the place is empty, there's 100 people there.
For sure. Yeah, it's beautiful there, so why not?
Yeah,
and it's so close to Denver, so you get all those, everybody just running up there for a quick trip.
Yep. Yeah, but Morrison is the traffic was a mess there. Even it wasn't a show day or anything, and traffic was screwed up.
Yeah, this whole kind of north central Colorado traffic situation is pretty bad these days, and anywhere within an hour of Denver is pretty congested, it seems.
Well, we got the same thing going on here.
Yeah.
Everybody's running away from California and headed east.
Yeah.
So the population in this area is just mushrooming. What can you do?
Yeah. Oh well.
Yep.
Everybody will migrate somewhere else at some point. The grass will be greener.
Yeah.
At some point. Awesome. Well, Gunnar, I appreciate you being on and talking about this. It sounds like it was a blast.
I would imagine. I may bump into you out there someday.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, next time you're out here, definitely connect with me and we'll hook up.
Yeah, we tend to get out there about once a year for a show.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right.
Cool. Nice to meet you,
sir. You as well. Have a great one.
Okay, thanks. Take care.
Hey now, do you have a great story about a Grateful Dead show you were at? I'd love to hear it and maybe have you on the podcast. Send me an email at will at talesfromthelot.org and let me know what show you would like to talk about and what made it so special to you.